Hi, ladies. Last week, we looked at the dangers of hard heartedness and saw Jesus show what wholeheartedness in God's service and kingdom looked like. We left off the chapter looking at the promise and reward of those who give up everything to follow Christ. And now Matthew brings on a parable that underlines the lessons taught in that preceding passage. Jesus speaks of how those who were the first will be the last, and the last first. And he does so again in verse 16 in this passage. We shall look at 3 points in this lesson. 1, priority. 2, preparedness. And 3, persistence. Priority. The man in this parable owned a vineyard. Jesus speaks of a time when grapes were ripe and the time had come to pick them. A penny, or a denarius, being the daily salary of a Roman soldier, Jesus is speaking of a day's fair wage. So this master hires some laborers in the morning. He sends them to his vineyard, and later in the day, the third hour after sunrise, he finds some potential workmen standing in the marketplace idle and hires them. He does the same in the 6th hour, 9th hour, and 11th hour, with a slightly longer conversation with those hired in the 11th hour. When the day came to its end, workers had to be paid, and he summoned his manager and said to pay them all equal age and to begin with the last and go on to the first. Now, those who had worked all day, even though there was an agreement in place for their wage, are not happy and expect to be paid more. But there was no priority given to those who came first or those who worked longer. In the master's eyes, they had all showed up. They had all put in the work. He asks an interesting question. Is it not lawful for him to use his money as he chooses? In the same way, God is not answerable to man for what he does with his rewards. All that we have, we receive from mercy. The parable warns us that priority in time means little and points to the truth that God acts in grace towards us all. The love of God in all its fullness is poured out on all sinners, and they receive more than they deserve. Jesus then goes on to foretell his death at that time and predict his resurrection. 2, preparedness, a state of readiness. We come to a section of the story of a mother and her 2 sons. Mark in his gospel tells us that James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with a request, but Matthew assures us that their mother was with them and that she took the lead in the request. She asks for an assurance that her 2 sons would sit at Jesus' right hand and his left in the kingdom. Next to the ruler, these 2 places were of the highest honor. Well, given there was faith in their request, in recognizing the authority of the king, but for all their confidence in Jesus, they were on the wrong track. Jesus goes on to say, you do not know what you're asking. Despite all the teaching Jesus had given, they had not realized that kingdom meant lowliness, sacrifice, rejection in this world. To ask the question shows that they had not understood it's impossible to seek greatness for oneself. The cup that Jesus speaks of is used in the Old Testament as well as in the Gospels with association of suffering, and used when recording what Jesus said at the time of his arrest. Now, Jesus responds that this gift is not his to give and that it had already been prepared for some. If it has already been prepared, then Jesus could not give it to others, no matter how worthy they thought. The actions of the sons did not please the rest, and they were indignant, showing anger. Jesus approves of neither the actions of the 2 nor of those of the 10, and thus he called them to teach them once more that it is lowliness, not self-assertion, that is important in the kingdom. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, he says. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. Now, this does not mean that that there are to be no leaders in the service of God, but that those who take the lead are to be humble, people seeking the opportunity of doing lowly service, not personal success. 3. Persistence. Matthew moves on in his account of Jesus' journey to Jerusalem and tells the story of two blind men who received sight as the master was leaving Jericho. These two men heard from the crowd that Jesus was passing by. They cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd rebukes them, but that does not seem to deter them. They remained persistent and cried out all the more the same words. In the end, they were successful and they received their answer. Jesus was moved with compassion and they recovered their sight and followed him. Now, what can we learn from these ladies? There are a lot of lessons in this passage, but let's pick a few. First, grace is not unfair, but it is more than fair. We may have a tendency to think that those who have known Christ more or who have served longer will receive more rewards. Let's also watch out for complaining attitudes or jealousy, saying that I've been faithful longer, why do they get the blessing? God is one of grace. He looks at our hearts and chooses to reward as he pleases. Second, it's never too late to start serving him. You may think, well, I'm this old, or I've been in the church this long and haven't really served. Take heart, show up today, and be ready to serve in his vineyard. And third, we see again the nature and character of Jesus, his compassion. When we cry out to him in persistence, no matter the hindrances, the weariness, the rejection, the discouragement from others, he hears us. It may not be in the way or the time that we expect, but he hears us. His grace is sufficient to carry us through as we wait. God bless you.